We are live stream. So should I call it to order before the, yeah, I guess I have to. On meeting to order at 8:40. Damon, do you want to go over some
Sure,
logistics before we elect a chair?
sure. So for the record, I'm Damian Leonard from the Office of Legislative Counsel. This meeting is just an organizational meeting. So the first order of business is to elect a chair. And possibly a vice chair if the committee wishes or the panel wishes. The next order of business would be to readopt the existing policy and rules of procedure from last year, so that there's a policy and rules of procedure in place. And then after that, it's up to the panel whether you want to have further discussion or just adjourn the meeting.
Okay, well, let's elect a chair. Are there any nominations?
I would like to nominate Representative Pale for chair.
Any further nominations? Discussion? Not accepted. Yes, I accept the nomination. All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, you guys appear to have it. Thank you. I would like to have a vice chair. I think that will make it clear in the event of the chair not being in attendance, who steps in. Is that okay with everybody else? Does everybody else feel like that's a good move? Super. I would like to nominate Taylor Small to be the vice chair.
Please accept.
Any further nominations for discussion? All those in favor, say aye. 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 Any opposed? Super, yay, thank you, Taylor. Yeah. Or is that not necessary? I mean, we
You don't need to have a clerk.
shouldn't have to do a roll call for anything. I wouldn't-
Yeah.
Unless someone specifically.
So yeah, I mean, your only roll calls will be in the event of a complaint coming in. But that's not a recorded vote, except in the event of like a formal hearing, and even that, it's not the proceedings aren't public.
So it's all required, okay.
Yeah, so
That is what-
you don't have to fill out a vote sheet or anything like that.
Clear up that little detail. So, sounds like the first thing we need to do is adopt the policy as it was at the end of last session. Is there any discussion about that?
I have a question about it.
Of course.
Where can I find, I'm gonna have to abstain because I have not even looked at that policy, nor do I know where to find it.
Sure, it's actually been posted to the panel's page on the legislative website. And an alternative to would be I could do a quick walkthrough of the policy and rules of procedure this morning. I have about 28 minutes until I have to run to my next meeting. So
If you can do it that quickly, that might be, and then,
I'll do-
so we can adopt it. And then at any point, if there are changes that we need to make, we can do that. Not a set in stone policy.
Lindsay,
But I think
could you send me an
because we're
invitation
going to
meeting?
need to have trainings on the policy in fairly short order, we need to have a policy that they can.
Yeah.
Yeah, present. So just to say, I do think that adopting it this morning for those reasons.
Yeah.
But I understand, having not read it, that.
I don't want to
You
vote
know,
on something I haven't read.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can understand. I understand, but I'm just.
Yeah.
No.
And the good news is,
I'm not asking you not to.
Yeah, I know, I just.
Goodness is what?
that we have some edits that we were discussing in the last session as well. So I know that we'll be doing a deeper dive into the policy.
Yeah.
And there's within the rules of procedure too. the thing with the policy and the rules of procedure is the panel is so new that each time, well, not each time, but often when there's an issue that comes up, you discover something else that needs to be adjusted because it doesn't work as smoothly as you envisioned. So, yeah, so Lindsay is working on inviting me. Okay. Just see if it is arriving. Of course, it's not here. So, that's okay. So I can start just to walk you through it.
This is my computer.
Yeah, no worries.
I have it up here if you want to look through it here.
No, I've got it on my laptop. I just wanted to share it with everyone.
Oh, just sure.
And
Maybe while that's getting sorted out, just so everyone on the panel knows, there is going to be a training on this policy happening for the whole house in the next, maybe not next week, it might be week after, but that's something that's been in the works, and so it's coming. And then after the training on the actual policy, I think there will also be a couple of trainings. And it sounds like there'll be a couple of them, not just one. To, you know, talk about discrimination in general and go a little bit deeper into.
so I got the invite, Lindsay.
Do we have to vote on this again, Damien? As a
We-
house?
Not
as a house.
I think just to vote as the panel. The House rules don't actually say that the House has to adopt the policy too. I think in the past, we've had a resolution from the House adopting the policy, but the panel just needs to adopt the policy and then educate the House on the policy. So I will be joining you on screen in a moment. And when I do that, could you make me a co-host, Lindsay? Thanks.
Not to be competitive, but the sexual harassment panel or not within policy.
They have not, they have not, I went to the chair yet. So
That's how competitive.
Government accountability.
Thank you all for getting here so quickly. Pulling this together.
All right, so here's the. More of my screen than I wanted, but that's okay. Oh. Is this my screen or yours? No, that's your screen. Just trying to share my screen. That's weird. Okay. I'm sorry, this is,
Yeah.
we are having
Yeah,
a lot of technical difficulties for everyone on YouTube.
Yeah.
Great, there we go, perfect. So the policy here provides that it's policy of the House to provide a professional working environment free from discrimination. House prohibits both discrimination and retaliation for reporting discrimination or cooperating in an investigation. The panel is tasked under House Rule 90A with investigating and adjudicating complaints in a manner that's fair, expeditious, and nonpartisan. The policy sets standards for the conduct of representatives and all staff who work for the House. And then it protects legislators, staff, pages, interns, members of the public, including lobbyists, advocates, and members of the press who experience discrimination attributed to regulated individuals. It defines discrimination as the unfair or unequal treatment of a person based on a protected characteristic. including conduct that limits, segregates, or classifies a person based on a protected characteristic in a manner that would deprive or attempt to deprive the person of opportunities related to their work in the State House, or would otherwise adversely affect their status in relation to their work in the State House, and it includes workplace harassment. Protected characteristics include race, color, religion, national origin, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, ancestry, place of birth, age, crime victim status, and physical or mental condition. And workplace harassment is described or defined as unwelcome conduct related to or directed toward a person on the basis of a protected characteristic. It can be verbal, physical, auditory, visual, or any combination of those, and it can be communicated by any means. It can be subtle or overt. It also includes conduct that is personally offensive, fails to respect the rights of others, lowers morale, interferes with work, or violates a person's sense of well-being. It does not need to be severe or pervasive to violate our policy. That's really important. The law currently requires that it be severe or pervasive to be unlawful. Our policy sets a lower bar, the idea being that we want to stop things before they get to the point of being unlawful. Workplace harassment, however, does not include petty slights, minor annoyances, or disappointments that a person may encounter while they're here. It can occur where there is a difference in power or the appearance of a difference in power. It can also occur between individuals who are equal in terms of authority or the appearance of authority, and even between a person who appears to have less authority and someone who has more authority. The other important thing is the victim does not have to be the person toward whom the offensive conduct is directed, but can be someone affected by the offensive conduct. So if two individuals are telling offensive jokes and someone else happens to be a member of the protected class that is the butt of the joke, they could be a victim under our policy, even though the conduct wasn't directed at them. In the same way, someone who's bystander to offensive conduct towards another person who shares the protected characteristic could also be a victim. There is a list here that I will not read all the way through that includes examples of discrimination and harassment. Importantly, it does include off-duty conduct that falls within the above definitions and affects the legislative work environment. So something that occurs down at the Three Penny or Charlie O's after hours, but that affects the legislative work environment, could also be a violation of this policy. It provides individuals with multiple options if they believe they've been discriminated against. The first is to confront the individual who engaged in the conduct and ask them to stop. However, there's no requirement or expectation that individuals have to do that, particularly given the power dynamics in the building. And then the next option is to contact the panel. Any person can contact the panel. The first option for them, if they do that, is to ask the panel to resolve the issue informally. Actually, I guess the first option is to ask for information about the policy. The second is to ask the panel to resolve the issue informally, which typically involves a mediated discussion with two members of the panel present and the individuals who are involved in the conduct. It can involve other forms of mediation between the parties to resolve the issue. The third option in involving the panel is a formal complaint, which is a lengthy process. It involves bringing in an outside investigator, formal hearings by the panel with the parties present, and possibly legal representation for the parties and other things. We can talk more about that process when we have a chance to go through the rules of procedure. For staff, there's the option to contact a supervisor. For members of the House, Contacting a supervisor could include something like going to the leader of your caucus, going to the speaker, going to the chair of your committee, and asking them to help you address the issue. Supervisors have a legal obligation to ensure that the environment that they supervise is free from discrimination. So they're charged under this policy with responsibility as well. For staff, there is also the option to contact the Office of Legislative Human Resources, who would also help to resolve the issue. And then individuals always have the option to go outside the policy by filing a complaint with the Human Rights Commission, the Attorney General's office, or seeking out a private attorney and filing a civil suit. Whenever any regulated individual witnesses or becomes aware of any discrimination towards a minor, they are required to immediately contact the Sergeant at Arms and Chief of the Capitol Police, particularly because of some of the dangers and potentially more serious issues that arise out of harassing or discriminating against a minor. The panel, legislative supervisors, staff to the panel, and legislative human resources are all required to keep any information reported under this policy confidential, except to the extent necessary to carry out an investigation or enforce the policy. Potential penalties under the policy include for representatives, training, removal from committee or committee leadership, censure, or even expulsion from the House in a very severe situation. It's important to note that the panel does not have the authority to do that on its own. It has to request a resolution from the House or request the Speaker's office, depending on the action, to take the action. If the regulated individual is the House clerk, corrective action again can include counseling, training, censure, removal. Removal of the House clerk or censure would again require action by the broader House. And then if the regulated individual is an employee of the Speaker of the House or the House clerk, recommended corrective action can include counseling, training, reprimand, loss of pay or vacation days, demotion, or termination. And again, that'll be done in conjunction with the appropriate supervisor. Same thing with legislative staff offices. Legislative staff offices are not listed under these penalties. And I believe the discussion when we did that was that they're not technically within the House, but we do work for the House. And to my knowledge, all of the legislative staff offices have adopted the policy. So if something involved, for example, an individual from the Office of Legislative Counsel, my office panel could intervene and then recommend penalty to Jen Kirby, the director of the office. Interns, staff, and volunteers working for a representative. Representatives are required to notify the Sergeant at Arms with the name, address, and contact information for the person, and if they're a minor, the names of their parents and guardians and how to contact them. And then the Sergeant at Arms is required to provide the interns, staff, and volunteers for individual representatives with copies of the policy and ensure that they know how to report discrimination. This is to ensure that we don't have, for example, an 18-year-old working in the State House who feels that they have nowhere to go. So training and information. The Speaker and the Chair of the panel shall ensure that the House members and the House staff receive training on the policy. Training will be open to members of the public, including anyone protected by the policy, and will be posted on the General Assembly's website. It already is posted on the website, so nothing to do there. Panel can appoint up to 3 members of the House to serve as discrimination prevention facilitators. Facilitators' job is to provide information on a confidential basis. The idea with this, I don't know that we've ever appointed facilitators. The idea is that this would be an individual who is knowledgeable but is not going to be involved in adjudicating complaints. They're simply there as a resource. If someone says, you know, I had a tough situation the other day, I don't know if it's covered under the policy or what my options are. That person might be a safe person for them to talk to without people feeling concerned that if a lot of times there's concern that if you come to the panel, even if it's not something that's actionable or something that you want to pursue, action is going to happen. And legally, the panel is obligated to ensure the work environment is free from discrimination. Sometimes when people are deciding how they want to proceed, they're afraid to jump right into consulting with the panel and then needing to have action taken. So, and then on the last page of the policy, it has contact information for the EEOC, the Human Rights Commission, the AG, and the State Ethics Commission. And I did just realize that it has the old panel members' contact information. So what I will do is you can vote to approve this contingent on my updating the contact information at the end here to reflect the 2 new members and the new chair. And other than that, everything else has stayed the same here in terms of contact information. So questions? It was extremely high level and fast. So
Thank you for going through that. I appreciate it. What happens when this is all having to do with the house? What happens when there's something that messes the chambers?
So
Great, I know,
yeah, the Senate does not have a discrimination prevention panel.
right,
The Senate Rules Committee has jurisdiction. To date, we have not had that issue that I'm aware of. But if it's a senator that's the alleged offender, then we would need to work with the Senate Rules Committee and Senate leadership to address the issue. If this is an issue where the panel receives a complaint and it processes into the jurisdiction of one of the sexual harassment prevention panels, the Senate does have a sexual harassment prevention panel. The rules of procedure for this panel provide that you can refer that complaint to the appropriate panel. Same thing if you got an ethics complaint about a member, you could refer that to the House Ethics Panel.
We have to, there are 3 of us on Human Services and we have to get to committee if we don't have a quorum. So I don't want to cut this morning short. However, we're going to have to meet again to actually talk about training and go over the procedures. And so can we adopt the policy? Yeah.
I move to adopt the policy as established in the previous.
with the changes.
With the changes, yeah.
Is there a second? I second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Okay,
Great. So, and then we can email and figure out next week. Can we meet as soon as next week? If we can find a,
Yeah,
Right,
I can
now
do it on
Wednesday.
Wednesday. Let's do an email.
yeah, we'll, yeah. And
Okay.
we'll get together and move everything else forward.
and
And at that point, should we have an informal? Not sure how much I can say.
we can